All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. Hope everybody is doing well tonight. We are actually trying something, again, a little bit different tonight. We are actually trying multicasting or simulcasting, whatever you want to call it. So we are actually live both here on Twitch and YouTube at the same time. So I'm hoping all of that works out. We'll see how that goes, right? Should also be fun managing both chats at once. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, welcome everybody, and hopefully we make some decent progress tonight. So before we continue into what we're working on, I do want to take just a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with our partners. They are the highest tier of subscription over on Patreon and YouTube memberships. They are Arslia and Gerbullies Inc. And I would also like to thank all the other supporters listed here under the supporters section. Those are the other tiers of subscription over on Patreon, YouTube memberships, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. So with all that said, I hope it's also obvious that I appreciate each and every one of you viewers who are either here or over on YouTube, either live or watching the VODs afterwards. I appreciate each and every one of you, and thank you for being here. Of course, none of this would exist without you guys, so I greatly appreciate it. Smudge, welcome to the stream. How are you doing today? Good to see you. We're getting a little bit of an early start today. I don't know how long we'll stream for, but we're kind of trying a couple of new things here. So we're streaming here on Twitch, and we're also streaming on YouTube. So I'm going to try and keep an eye on both chats, and we'll see how it goes, right? I'm doing pretty well. Can't complain. Trying to stay hydrated and all that too, right? So can't complain. So I'm hoping that we can make some decent progress tonight on actually our text box. We kind of started thinking about that last night, but you know, we got caught up in a little bit of conversation, which is totally fine. And you know, we didn't quite make it there, but you know, maybe I can finish it off camera if we don't finish it tonight. So with that being said, you know, this is an interactive stream. I like talking with you guys. I like chatting with you guys. So feel free to jump into chat. And if you have any questions about what we're doing, or you just want to chat about something that's relatively related to the stream, feel free to jump in and we'll have a conversation. So cool. All right. So we started thinking about what a text box might look like from a data perspective in our standard UI. And we also briefly laid out this sort of image that we're going to use for our 9-slice data. And so we have two states. We have sort of a normal state and then a focus state. And so focus is actually one of the things that we're going to have to work on as well tonight. So we've actually got quite a few things on the list. So we'll see where we wind up, right? Okay, so speaking of internal data on text boxes, let's see, what did we leave off with? So we have size, color, which I'm not 100% sure we're going to use. We could repurpose that as text color, I suppose. The 9-slice is going to be sort of the background and outline of the text box, so we'll need that. We're going to need the instance ID, frame number, and draw index for that 9-slice. And then we're also going to need the content label, right? And so I guess the next portion of this is actually going to be to set up all of the interface functions. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take a copy of what we have in our 9-slice, or I should say our button, right? And base all of our logic sort of on that. So let's see, we have basically from this button control on, and I'm basically going to use this sort of as a template. We're not going to use all the code here, but it just makes it a little bit easier than sort of writing all this stuff over once again from scratch, right? So let's see, we are not going to be dealing with mouse out, mouse hover, all that stuff, mouse down. We actually might deal with mouse down because we need to focus. So you know what? I'm going to copy these events anyway. I'm going to take all of these and come down here and just slap them in. And let's just mark this off. And we're going to call this Textbox. All right, and we'll just mark this off. So, we're going to need, obviously, Textbox control create. This is going to be Textbox internal data. This will be Textbox internal data. So we're just going to kind of convert these over, right? Reasonable defaults. So this is one thing we're going to have to actually address for all the different control types is reasonable defaults, as well as being able to have configurable properties on these things. So we definitely need to set that up as well. Have you thought much about respecting the text scaling set on the OS for UI elements? Yes, we have actually. And that is something I brought up a stream or two ago, I want to say. And so basically, what we have the capability of doing is taking into account what we're going to call the device pixel ratio. And that's similar to something you would have in browsers, right? So if you're dealing with what we call a high DPI monitor, like say a 4K display, you might have a value of 2 for the pixel device ratio, right? Because the pixels are more dense than a typical 1080p, which would have 1, right? And so we did some things in the platform layer to actually account for that and calculate some of that stuff. And on Mac and Windows, we actually have the capability to switch that based on the current display that the window, or the current monitor that the display is in. So actually, let me platform Win32. We'll look at this one since I'm on Windows at the moment. And so we have, let's see, here, this device pixel ratio, right? So typically, under normal circumstances for a 96 DPI monitor, which is your sort of average typical, this would calculate out to be 1, right? And then for anything higher than that, you'd use 2. And so we can use that to actually scale the UI, right? And so we do that here on Windows. If I go to Device, Pixel, so we default it to 1, right? And then we have, on Windows, we have this DPI awareness context per monitor aware v2. There's different sort of awareness levels for this API. There's also, I have this in here where older versions of Windows might have to use this. So I'm on Windows 11, so I'll definitely have this guy here. Windows 10, we might have to fall back to this one, right? So for right now, I just have this in here because this is basically requires your machine to be semi-up-to-date. If it becomes a huge problem, I'll look into this sort of fallback, right? So we have this default pixel ratio here. We have a getter for it, right? And then here, whenever we change the DPI of the display, so in the case of Windows, whenever you move that window from one display to another display and that DPI changes, this event gets fired. And at that point, we go ahead and we say, okay, well, what's the DPI for this particular monitor? Now, this event gives us both the X and Y axis DPI, which is a little bit weird because we only really need one, right? So we just use X. And then we say, okay, we take that DPI, whatever that value is, and divide it by the default, what we're considering the default screen DPI, which is 96. So we'll either get, in most cases, we'll either get 1 or 2 based off of this. And then we go ahead and set that and mention it in the console, right? And so when we get ready to implement this scaling, we can actually use this device pixel ratio to actually handle that. So I hope that makes sense. In addition, we're also going to eventually allow for the user to set it, or the user to override it. So you can either use the one that's provided by the OS, or you can use the one that, you could set it to something custom. So, yeah, I think it's going to be pretty flexible. The ability to set it explicitly is going to be more important in Linux, specifically if you're on the X11 windowing system, because this whole thing kind of exists and is completely wrong and is frankly a complete nightmare and unusable, right? Especially if you have mixed DPI displays. So Wayland, I think that'll be a little bit better, but at least for right now on the Windows platform, this will always be one. But for Mac and Windows, we do have proper support for it. Cool. Glad you asked that. That's a good question. All right. Super cool. Thanks for showing that. I'm glad Microsoft thought it out for developers to make good use of the feature. Yep. Although I will say it took them several tries, right? Because there's this API, which is a V2, and then there's this API, which is sort of their V1. But then before that, there's like 2 others for like older versions of Windows. And then before that, it wasn't even really supported at all. So they did get it right, but it took them a while. I can't speak for that on Mac OS in terms of what the history is on that, but it was fairly easy to retrieve on that platform as well. Cool. So, with that said, let's go back to our Textbox control. So I think for our default size, I think a width of 200 kind of makes sense for default. We can always change it. And height of 50 seems a little extreme to me, so I'm actually going to go with a height of like 30, maybe. Let's go with 34. And the reason I'm thinking that is because we have like a 31 pixel font size that we're kind of using all over the place as our sort of default. And so I think I'll stick with that and then just use this, right? Ideally, this size should probably change based on the font size of the text that you set. So we may want to think about that as well. We're going to default the color to 1. We'll keep that. So destroy is going to be, whoops, if I can spell. Right, and in fact, we're going to do text box for all these. Apparently I can't type tonight, so that's neat. Text box, okay. So I think we've done everything we need to there. Why is my Discord like still giving me notifications? That's really annoying. Let me see if I can actually get that to stop it, or otherwise I might have to actually exit it. You know what? I'm actually gonna just kill Discord, I think. Supposed to be a streaming mode on this thing. Where did streamer mode? There it is. Says it's supposed to automatically go, but it's not actually doing the thing. Okay. Maybe that'll do it. All right. Those of you watching on YouTube, by the way, welcome. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm not just paying attention to Twitch chat. I am paying attention to YouTube as well. So if you guys have any questions about what we're doing along the way, feel free to jump in, right? This is an interactive stream, so we're trying simulcasting for the first time tonight, so I'm still kind of making sure everything's set up right. So hopefully you guys can hear me well and all that over on the YouTube side as well. Okay, I'm actually going to close this pane. And let's see. So we've got these set up. The destroy, I'm just going to leave that way for now. We probably need to actually revisit the destruction methods for all of these at some point. So that just destroys, let's see, height set. So we're eventually going to want a height set and a width set. And maybe a size set. In fact, we probably ought to go ahead and set that up now. Yeah, my Discord is still making notification sounds, which is really annoying. Wonder if there's a way I can like mute that. One second, guys. Let me just figure that out real quick. Because this is one of those things that wasn't happening before, but for some reason now it is. Maybe I can just turn off notification sounds or something. Maybe that'll work. We'll see. Oh, sounds. There we go. Disable all notification sounds. There we go. Okay, that should work. Okay. So instead of just having a height set, we should probably also have a width set. And then I'm actually going to paste in another version of this for size set, right? So we'll say size. And we'll have I32, 32 width in here. And then here, we can just say typed data size x equals width. And I'm going to flip these because that, whoops. I'm going to flip these because that feels weird to have them in that order. We'll also set the 9 slice, so we'll go ahead and do that. So I'll change this one to X and width. And then we'll also update the bounds so that our click detection works. Width, right? And so we're basically going to do all these operations, right? And then we're going to update the 9 slice. And so what I can actually do is we'll say width set. And then we can literally just return SUI Textbox control size set. This is going to be self, and then we're setting width here, so let me actually change this to width. Right, so we'll pass through width as is, and then height is going to be, I'm going to need this. So we'll say type data size, and we want y axis in this case, right? And then we can take this same thing and put it here for the height. Oops, did I just do, I did y on that. That should be x. Right, this one should be y. Wait a minute. No, I had that right. Yes. Yeah, because we want to use the width that's passed in, but keep the original height. So this one needs to do the opposite. So this one needs to be X, but passed in height here, right? So we want to keep the original size X here and use the new height. And this one we want to keep the original size Y here and use the passed in width. Okay, so that makes sense on those. So button control load, this is going to be Textbox control load. Textbox internal data. This is actually going to wind up being K system type. I thought we had K system type standard UI extension. There we go. Okay. And I'm actually going to remove that, right? Because that hack doesn't really apply anymore. Okay, remove hard-coded stuff. That still technically exists because we don't have a way to configure this yet. So I'm going to leave this in here. The Atlas min and max do need to change though. So for our initial states, this is going to be, let's see, 180 and 31. So 180 and 31. Let's see. Are you working on implementing editor UI using this framework? If so, have you thought about making a reflection system for drawing UI properties of engine objects? Yeah, so that is something that we are definitely going to tackle. I'm not sure whether we're going to do it with reflection or metadata, or whether we get that metadata from reflection. Because C doesn't obviously have reflection, right? So if we were to do reflection, we'd have to write that from scratch. And so that is something that I have thought about a little bit, at least on the surface. And what I'm thinking about is essentially the way that the editor is going to work is each type of editable object needs to register itself with the editor in order to be editable through the editor. And when that object registers itself with the editor, it should also tell the editor about itself, what properties it has, and so forth. So I think probably that's the way I'm going to go with it, because that's still extensible. It still allows user code to bring in new types that have new properties and stuff like that. And then when you register that type with the editor, it already knows about it because of the registration process that exists. We could do a bunch of fancy reflection, but I don't know how much. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work out that way. I suppose we could certainly try it, right? But I figure short term, it's easier to just have those objects register with the editor, and then when you go to select an object and pick apart its properties, it should be able to say, okay, well, I know you have a property called this, so go ahead and give me the value for that type of thing. Hope that makes sense. So it's not really reflection. It's kind of metadata, but kind of not. Cool. All right. So that was our Atlas min. Let me see what the... one could call it that. Yeah, exactly. It's not like true reflection. It's not really metadata in the sense that like we're not creating XML and like passing it through or something like that, right? And it's not really a defined structure either. Let's see. So the maximum for this is going to be what? 193.43. 193, 43. And there's a chance that I might be off by 1 on these. I can't remember. So we may have to adjust that. The pixel corner size is still going to be 3 pixels, right? So we still have our 3 pixel corner size, so that we should be good on. And then our sort of blown up corner size, right? So this corner pixel size is the sample size from the atlas itself, versus this, which is the actual size of the corners in the actual real world, right? Which will be 10 pixels by 10 pixels. That seems a little bit extreme to me for Textbox, actually. I guess we can start with that, but we might have to change it to like 6 or something like that. All right, so we generate the 9 slice. That should be exactly the same as before. The bounds are just going to take from the type data. So all this stuff should be the same. Obviously, the unload we're going to have to handle at some point as well. I'm not worrying about that just yet. The text box control update, there are going to be some updates that we have to do for this. So for example, we are going to want to like maybe have a cursor flash or something every set amount of frames or certain amount of time. So we are actually going to use the update method on that. So here's the render. And the render is going to render the 9 slice, first off. So that is actually exactly, we can leave that exactly as is. We are going to have an extra step, though. So we have one renderable for this. But then we're also going to have a second renderable that we push onto that, which is going to be our text object that we actually haven't sort of stood up yet. So maybe we should actually do that next. And so I guess probably the best place to look for that would be like another example of a text control that we already have. So let's do this, and we'll say, oh, text is not going to work. What do I call it? Label is probably what I search for. So this is kind of our creation for labels. I'm going to use this one because it's a system font, and that's really what we want to use for our text boxes. So I'm going to just kind of use this one as my template. So with the text box control, we do a control create to create the sort of outer object itself of the text box, right? But then we also need to do another control create, which is going to be this guy. And essentially, we can actually just return the results of this, I think, right? Whoops. So instead of having the return true down here, right, we'll just return the results of this guy. And so what we can do is we're going to hard code the font and stuff for right now. We are going to get rid of this text for right now, right? We're just going to have an empty string there, and we'll have type data, and we'll have content label is what we're going to use for that. So that's sort of the name of our internal object there, right? All right. And so that's what we'll use for right now. So that's the create. Let's get rid of that. And we'll just take this block and move it to load, right? So we'll just kind of line all these operations up with where they would fall in here. So right after we load the sort of base for the text box, the 9 slice and all that, we'll put this in here. So again, we can just return the result of this. And here we'll say typed data. And we'll say content label. Got an extra parenthesis there. So we can remove that, right, and do that. And the next thing is going to be, what was the next thing? Register control, right? So we need to do that. We are going to have ads here in 1 second, though. So I do want to just let you guys know about that. So for those of you over on the YouTube side, Twitch generally has ads throughout the stream. There they are right there. And so what we like to do is, even though you guys kind of don't really see that over on the YouTube side, I do like to pause the stream anyways so that nobody kind of misses content along the way. And so the pause for ads is generally about 1 to 2 minutes. In this case, it's about 2 minutes. And so that's kind of what we're doing there. YMO. Hey, I recently subscribed to your channel, and I just want to say thank you to the amazing content. Awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And welcome, by the way. Tonight's actually the first night we're streaming over on the YouTube side, so welcome to that stream as well. Up to now, we've been streaming over on Twitch, but we're now sort of simulcasting, so it's cool to see that that's working, and you guys are able to hear me and whatnot. So yeah, thank you for being here. Thanks for the subscription. Appreciate that. And yeah, we're just kind of continuing on with our UI system for tonight. So yeah, we'll be good to go here in another 50 seconds or so, and we'll just kind of continue on with that. This will also keep me from having to manually upload the Twitch VODs, which would be kind of nice. It looks like the interesting part is it looks like I've got more viewers on YouTube right now than I have on Twitch, which is kind of interesting. Didn't expect that. So welcome to all the viewers there on YouTube. Thank you guys for tuning in. Normally the stream kind of starts off a little bit slow, and then we kind of ramp up as it goes. So, all right, so we are back. And so the next thing that we do after load is we actually register the control. And then we add children and all that stuff and update active. So actually all this stuff should probably be done right here. So let's see, do we already have the type state up here, so I actually don't need that. And actually, instead of returning this, right, I am going to actually switch this back. So we'll say if that fails to load for some reason, then we'll say kerror failed to set up label within Textbox. Right? And I guess at this point we return false. Okay, so we obviously need to, what do we have? The typed state, I think, is what we're calling this. So typed state, and then we need typed data, and then what do we call that? Content label. So we need to register this with the UI system. We need to set up the parenting. So the parenting is just going to be typed state again. I'm actually just going to do that for this real quick as well. And then this 0 here means that we're actually, we would be parenting it to nothing, or the root element, which is not what we want. We actually want to parent it to self, right? because that's sort of the parent object that we're using here. So we're going to say self there, and then type data, content label. Let's see, failed to parent text box system text. Right. Then we'll go ahead and I guess we can go ahead and set it as active. There's really no reason not to, I suppose, right? So we'll say typed data. Or is it type state that we need? Here's type data. Content label is active, right? Let's see, and then we'll update the active, so we'll use type state here again. Type data, content label. For text box system text. Okay, so at this point we can then go ahead and return true. And at that point, we should have loaded up the sort of sub control, right? And actually, just to test this and make sure it runs, or make sure that it's all set up, I am actually going to put something in there as the initial text, right? So we can at least see that it runs. And then once we're sure that that is updating, we can set that back to default with being empty. So I'm not going to worry about update right now. Here's the render control render. So we're also going to want to do, let's see, we're actually going to need button internal data, typed data. Oh, that's the wrong type data. That's why. This should be text box internal data. Typed data, content label. That wasn't a pointer type, was it? No, I didn't think so. It owns that. Okay. So I guess we can check content label. I actually just thought of something else we're going to have to do too. What can we check to make sure that that is actually that's actually set up, right? I guess we could look at do we want to look at internal data? Yeah, I guess we could look at internal data, right? So if we have internal data on that, then we're basically going to, actually, you know what? I don't even have to do this. I can literally just say SUI label control render, and then pass typed data content label. I need the address of that. And then pass along pframe data as well as render data. Just pass it along as is. And I can actually just return the result of that. And there we go, right? So I suppose we could come up with something to sort of standardize the rendering of a 9 slice, because I have a feeling we're going to be doing that a lot more. But for now, this will work. We don't need mouse out for this. We don't need mouse over, so I'm going to kill those. We do need mouse down and mouse up. Did we not have move? We don't. Okay. So we are going to need mouse move at some point, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So we'll have Text box on mouse down, text box on mouse up, right? And of course, we're not going to be changing this, but I do want to keep it. Because we're not going to change the slice based on this, right? These are pretty much going to be used for obtaining focus, right? And eventually we'll be able to use it for highlighting text and things of that nature, but okay. Keenum, hello. Oh, hey, welcome back on YouTube. How are you? I'm doing well. How about you? Good to see you. From Lake, hello. It's 2 o'clock. I assume 0200 you mean 2 o'clock in the morning. You're going to sleep now. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, it was good of you to drop by. Cool. Welcome. YMO, is this UI system going to be similar, better than IMGUI? Sorry if I missed the stream when you went over this. So, I'm going to say neither. And the reason I'm going to say that is because what we're looking to do is look at a way of designing a UI system from the ground up, right? And we're actually going to be tackling different styles of UI systems in this engine. So this isn't an immediate mode. This is a retained mode UI. So it's not the same as IMGUI in that way. It's not an immediate mode UI. We might make an immediate mode UI at some point. But retained mode is sort of the version I went with for this because I feel like it makes the most sense. And so, will it be better than IMGUI? Probably not, at least in the beginning, right? Because IMGUI is made by a team of people. It's been optimized a lot over the years, right? So we're not going to have any of those things right off the bat. We're creating this 100% from scratch. So I'm not going to say it's going to be better either. But the purpose behind this is to sort of understand the process of building one of these, what goes into the design of one of these, and you know, kind of addressing the pitfalls and things that come up and issues that come up along the way. And then when we're all done, we can say, well, these are the things we liked about this system. These are the things we didn't like about that system. And, you know, maybe implement some of those things and just improve on it as time goes. So it's definitely not going to be like a, you know, a one-size-fits-all type of thing, right? So I hope that makes sense. All right. So I think we have most of what we need there. We do need to hook up some events. We also need to get these declared in the header so that stops bleating. Let me do a search for... So we already have mouse out, mouse over. We also have click. And we have mouse up and mouse down. So we should technically, as long as we assign those function pointers, I think... Oh, right. We have an issue here to fix, actually, that we need to address as well. Okay. Coffee lava. Hydrate. All right. I see. I see. If this is what if this is the scam you're talking about, I will hydrate just for you. Welcome to the stream. So many. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. And coffee. Did you say shaking my head? My head. Are you trying to go do like a PHP thing there where it's like recursive? I'm a fan of it if you are. Totally cool with it. Let's see. Thank you for the amazing answer. All right. Yeah, no problem. That was intentional. Yeah, I was wondering. It's like when people say ATM machine. Always cracks me up. All right. So we actually have something here we kind of put a to-do on, and we put a pin in it at the moment, and we need to actually resolve it, right? So we are actually assuming at this point that it's a button, right? Which is obviously crappy. So we need a way to handle two different mouse down events, essentially, right? So we need the sort of base functionality that you would get along with the control, but then the user should also be able to do one. And I've thought a little bit about this offline, and I think it's time we probably adjust it, or address it, rather. And so if we do standard UI system and have a look at this guy here, we'll just add some events to this, right? Tori Basilisk, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate that. Appreciate that a lot. And welcome to the stream. So I am, by the way, I am simulcasting between Twitch and YouTube. So it's a little bit of an interesting experience just trying to figure out all the events and stuff that happen, right? I think I'm getting double notifications on these. Tiny Big Games, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. Ruche, you had a coffee. Nice. Yeah, so that's a every time somebody says coffee in chat, it should increase that counter, right? So there's been 8 coffees had. Just kind of a secret little thing there. That applies to Twitch chat. I don't have it set up on the YouTube side yet. Sorry, guys. I got to get my my bot implemented over on that side. All right, so over here, we already have handlers for on mouse down and on mouse up. And so those are the ones that I'm thinking should be exposed to the user, right? As well as on mouse over, on mouse out. And then what I'm thinking is we also have sort of duplicates of these. Specifically, we'll just do these two for now. And we're going to call this internal mouse down and internal mouse up. And these will be the ones where like we set the state of the button by clicking on it or something like that. In fact, we'll have to do the mouse over and mouse out as well. Might as well just do them all. Right, and so we'll have the sort of internal version of that where we have the default behavior of the control there. And then anything that's user will basically live in here, right? And so we're already kind of using some of this, like the on-click event is actually handled in the application, set up in the application, right? So we're already kind of doing that, and this just sort of keeps us from breaking that. Hello, ouch, I can't handle a normal stream. Multicasting must be insane. It's actually not too bad yet, right? The chat isn't flowing too fast on either side, so it's not too bad, actually. As it scales, that might be an interesting thing, but for now, it's not too much of an issue, thankfully. All right, so I think what we're going to do here is before we even check or do any of this kind of stuff, since we're doing a whole bunch of matrix traversal and stuff like that stuff's kind of expensive if we don't need to be doing it, right? If there's no callback to be made here, then we probably shouldn't be doing it. So what I'm going to do is within the control itself, I'm going to say if control, and in this case, we'll say internal mouse down, right? Because that's the handler we're in. So if we have that, then we'll do this stuff, right? And that's just a bit of an optimization there. And then in this case, instead of assuming buttons, right, we can just say control internal mouse down. And at that point, we could just pass... are we just calling it control at this point? Yeah, control. And let's see, our events. EVT, I guess is what it was, right? Yeah, EVT. Right? And that's kind of how we'll handle that, right? So if we have one assigned, then we'll kind of do all this other stuff. Otherwise, we won't. And so what we'll need to do is in our button, I guess we'll do it in initialize. We'll say button, we'll do button create, right? Because that's where we assign the other function pointers. We'll say out control internal mouse down equals SUI button on mouse down. And we'll just sort of do the same thing for mouse up. And then mouse over. Well, I guess we'll do mouse out since I actually typed that. Out. Oops. Then mouse over. Right? And that way, we have all of that sort of standard behavior available, and then the user can sort of override that if they want to. Alvaro, first time catching you live. Well, welcome to the stream. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for that. It's always good to have you here. T.S. Tenisel? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but all the mouse handlers share the same type. Maybe add a type def for it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I could do that for sure. Yep. Yeah, you're not wrong. The only reason I haven't done that yet is because I don't know 100% that the structure isn't going to change. And if I type def it, then I may not see immediately where I need to make all those changes. So that's probably like on a cleanup pass, something that I would do. But that is a very good call out. You're right about that. Voidsider and Setlogger, thank you so much for the follows. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. All right. So I think I'm also going to take these real quick and go down to Textbox, create, and slam these here. Right, even though the text box, did we actually create all of these for the text box? I think we only did mouse up and down. So I think we're going to need the over and all that other stuff eventually too. But we'll go ahead and text box, text box, and these two technically don't exist yet. But this way, when I create them, it'll be very easy to just uncomment that and add them, right? Okay, so we have that. Let's go back to the top here, back to our event handlers, right? We don't need this anymore. Okay, so we have internal mouse down. In this case, we're going to have kind of the same thing. So let's see. We probably ought to do this regardless and just branch it here. So we'll say if control dot internal mouse up. Then we'll do all this other stuff. And then here, we'll say control internal mouse up. We'll pass control and EVT. Now the only weird thing about this is these all return booleans, right? Which I'm thinking maybe they shouldn't. Because what are we really going to do if, like, this fails, for example? Like, I don't know that there's anything that we necessarily know or care about there. So I'm actually thinking I might switch all of these over to be void return types. Because I don't think we're ever actually going to use or check the Boolean type for those. After watching your videos for a while and stealing some great ideas for my engine built in Swift and Metal. Nice. So, yeah, when I go to build the Metal backend for this, which is a thing I'm going to eventually have to do, I may have to ping you on that, because I have not looked into that API much at all. So that's going to be an experience for sure. Actually, just streaming from my Mac laptop is probably going to be an experience all on its own. Should be interesting. Okay. Out of curiosity, how is that going? In terms of writing it and working with Metal, like, I've not worked with that particular API directly yet. It's on my list of things to do, but is it like a decent API or is it kind of hard to follow? You know what? I'm just going to bite the bullet and do this now, because I'm not going to want to do it later, and the more of these we implement, the worse that's going to be. So, let's see. So we'll do... I guess we'll do mouse over first. Actually, does this... Yeah, that returns one as well. Okay. Alright, so we kind of started doing it here with this button, right? Because we actually have this implemented separately. Let's see, but we didn't actually check that up here. So we should probably have a check here to say if control mouse over or yeah, we should probably check all four, right? So control mouse out or control, whoops, I did the internal one there. I didn't want the internal one yet. Mouse out. Or control internal mouse over. Or control internal mouse out. Right? If it has any one of those four, then we'll go ahead and do all of this stuff. Because this is kind of an expensive operation. We don't want to have to do that unless we absolutely need to. And then in here, we can actually say if control internal mouse over, then control internal mouse over, control EVT. Get rid of this. So if the internal one exists, call it, then check if the user one exists, call it. We should probably do that same thing up here, actually. And same thing goes for this, right? Abakut, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome. Please do. We'll be looking forward to it. Got mine running on all Apple devices that support Metal. Nice. That's awesome. It's awesome compared to OpenGL ES. Built my first engine a while back with Objective-C, so working on this is refreshing. Nice. Okay. I've never used Swift either, actually, but yeah, I do have some Objective-C in here, obviously, for the the windowing stuff that macOS requires. So there's that. All right, so we're going to do the same thing here. So if control internal mouse out, then we'll call control internal mouse out control EVT. Get rid of this. Right? Oops. There we go. Okay. The only other thing that I feel like I should just go ahead and add here is a mouse move event, right? Or at least we should probably hook it up, right? So we have up, down, over, and out. But since I'm here in this, I should probably just hook this up, right? We should probably get all of this logic correct first, and then I can go down and like change all the signatures. So I think I'm going to change these to be void as well. There's really no reason for us to be checking like the result of this. I don't think that's going to give us any value, right? So the last one I'll do void on mouse move. Struct SUI control self struct SUI mouse event. Right, and then we'll take this and do an internal version as well. And that'll give us, that just means that we have everything hooked up at this level, and then as we implement the controls, it'll just kind of hook itself up and just work, right? Tariq Ben, hi, what's your color theme? It doesn't look like Nightfly anymore. It's not Nightfly, it's Adawada. Spelled like that. Adawada is the theme. Yeah, I changed it a while ago because I noticed when you're looking at it on a much smaller screen, it wasn't quite high contrast enough to be easily readable. So this one is much more high contrast. I like it a lot better. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so there's two ways that we could handle mouse movement. We could have that mouse movement only happen if we're within this, right? And maybe that's what we want. Oh, you know what? There's another. We're going to need to handle drag events too, but I think I can implement that one separately. We're not going to need that right away. So we can either handle mouse move events only when the mouse is like over the control, actively moving over the control, which I think kind of makes sense. Or we could do it globally. I don't really see the need too much for global, other than maybe if you're like dragging from one control to another or something like that. But I think if we need to implement that down the road, we can implement it separately. So I'm not going to worry about that for right now. And we're going to say if it contains that point, then we're going to handle the hover stuff, which is fine. And then we can also handle the mouse move event, right? So after we handle the hover stuff, we can also say if control on mouse move, call control on mouse move, control event. And then we'll say if control internal mouse move, control internal mouse move, control event. All right. I think that makes the most sense, right? So, move events are only triggered while actually over the control. Right. Okay, so that's all of the mouse movement stuff. We probably ought to come back up here because we have an on click. That probably should be user only. I can't imagine. No. Internal click event would be a thing for radio buttons or checkboxes, actually. So we should probably also have void internal click struct SUI control struct SUI mouse event. Also, we are not checking to see if this even is assigned yet, so that's actually an issue. So if control on click and let's see, the order of these is always internal first, I think, right? Oh, yeah, it should be internal first. So we'll do internal first and then user code. So we'll say here, whoops. So if control internal click, control internal click, control event. That makes more sense. Yeah, we didn't check for any of this stuff, did we? We said internal mouse up here. We did the check. Did we do that down here? We did. I guess in this case we should check for both. Which kind of was like a double check, but I think I'm alright with that. So we have the internal mouse up. But we didn't check for the user mouse up, right? So we'll say or control on mouse up. And then if control on mouse up, call control on mouse up. Control event. And that's kind of the same structure we'll use up here too. Let's see. Is this previous version of this code in Git and in main? Just saw the standard UI branch. Yeah, so this all is being done in a branch. So generally the way that we work is we try to work in feature branches. So let me see if I can actually pull up. So I'll just go to kohiengine.com right here and pull up the repo. So we generally have a couple of feature branches. Looks like I have some stale branches here. No, not really. So standard UI is where we're working right now. Editor is something we kind of started and haven't really gotten back to because we needed standard UI for that. So once this is complete, it'll get merged into main. Bug fix 172 is something that's kind of outstanding. So that's the reason that one still exists. And then shader reflection is just me messing around with shader reflection with Vulkan, right? But yeah, these are the only branches we have at the moment. So we're doing everything right now in standard UI, and then all of that will get merged into main when we're done with the feature. Done with the feature, meaning in the first pass. Can Consider setting unused handlers to some stub function rather than null. It would let you remove a lot of if statements. It would allow me to get rid of a lot of the if statements, but those if statements also save me from doing some expensive computation here. So in this case, I would still want to check to see if those things were assigned anyway. And that's why I'm using them here. But that's not a bad call. But I do have a reason for not doing that specifically. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to check here to see if control on mouse down. And then if control internal mouse down. And then if control on mouse down. Control on mouse down. Oh, we got ads, so we will break here just for a minute. And for those of you on YouTube, I know you guys don't get served ads at the same time as the Twitch stream does, but some people get ads, some people don't. And I like to break the stream for everybody across the board so that nobody misses what's actually going on the screen, right? Because nothing's more annoying than having an ad running and then you see this little tiny code window and you can't actually, understand what's going on and you miss stuff, and that's just not cool, right? So ad breaks are generally pretty short. In this case, we've only got 1 minute and 15 seconds left, and we'll get right back to it. So that's just the reason that we do that. Hope that makes sense to you guys. Also gives me a second to catch my breath, right? So we got about 45 seconds left on ads, and we'll get back to it. Yep, we're doing game engine dev. We got about 10 seconds left on our ad break, if you can hear me. And we will be resuming. All right, and we are back. So, yeah, we are doing game engine dev here. We are working on the Kohi game engine. And so, just to give a brief update, this is an engine that has been developed almost entirely on YouTube/Twitch. It started sort of as a tutorial series, and then we moved over to doing live streaming on Twitch, because I've been trying a bunch of stuff since this whole series started, just to see what works, what doesn't work. And so far, this version of it seems to be the most popular. So it got to a point where the engine is big and complex enough that a tutorial format doesn't really suit it anymore. And so that's why we do everything here on stream live. So the website I'm looking at here is kohiengine.com. So I'll just drop a link to that in Twitch chat. And I will actually manually put this over on YouTube. We're simulcasting to YouTube as well. And so, that's our first time actually doing that tonight. So we're just kind of trying to work out all the kinks there. But, yeah, so the project's been underway for about 2 years at this point. A little over 2 years, actually. Actually, in February, it's going to be 3 years at the end of February of next year. And so the project is completely open source. So here is the GitHub repo. It's also available here on the main website. We've got links to basically everything here, including the actual stream right here, so you guys can see me in a Hollow Mirrors effect. That's always cool. And so there's links to the GitHub, the Patreon, the Discord. Our Discord server's got about 700 people on it at the moment, so it is still actively growing. So that's neat. But yeah, our project is completely open source, completely free to use. It is Apache 2.0 licensed, which means that you can use it for whatever you want. Personal, commercial, doesn't matter. All I ask is that if you use the code, you credit me. That's it. And so it is completely open source. There will never be any royalties or any fees of any kind associated with this engine. It will always be open source and 100% free. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Would it make sense to add links to the videos where you cover how to build the project? The README makes a reference to a video, but I do not know which one you're referring to. The problem with that is I probably ought to add it, like, probably just right here, right? Because the problem is the build process has evolved over time. So if you're building the current version of the code, the build process is much different than it was when we first started the project, right? And so, yeah, I probably ought to add that on the README. I'm surprised I didn't actually do that. That's a bit of a noob mistake on my part, honestly. I did put everything in here that you actually need to start on it, including cloning, but yeah, I should probably go ahead and I'll just add another section here for that. So you're trying to build on Linux. So basically the way that the project is structured is if we look here, we have a few important folders, right? So the core engine code is in this engine folder. All of our assets are here in assets. And then we have the standard UI, which is a separate library that we're building, right? So the engine itself is a shared library, or a DLL if you're on Windows, or an SO if you're on Linux, or a dilib if you're on Mac. The plugin audio OpenAL is the audio plugin. That is also a shared library. Standard UI is a shared library. Testbed lib is a shared library. Testbed is an actual executable, right? So this is where the entry point of the application is if you're running debug. And then we have some tools here, which is largely not used at the moment. And then we have the Vulkan renderer, which is also a shared library. And so to build this, essentially what we're doing is we have a couple of files here. So you'll want to run the batch file if you're on Windows, or the shell script equivalent if you're on Linux or Mac. And generally what you'll want to do is you'll want to do the build debug version of this, right? That's the one we use here on stream. So I actually have my Vim set up, so I could just type space BD for build debug, and it builds it, which is probably going to fail, I think, because I have errors in my code, right? But essentially what that's going to do is it's going to build into this bin directory. And that's where it's going to output all the lib folders, the DLL files, the executables, all that stuff's going to land in bin. And when you actually run the application, you'll want to run from the context of that bin folder. And as long as you do that, you should be good to go. If you are running the current version of the engine, you do not have to pre-build the shaders ahead of time. If you're running a version of the engine from a couple of months ago, and before that, we had this, what was called a post-build script that you'll need to run. And that's not in here because that's been eliminated at this point. But if your shaders, if you're getting errors about your shaders not loading, then you'll need to run that post-build script. So I hope that helps. I don't know if you ever explained this, but why isn't the engine core a static library? What benefits do you get by using a dynamic library? Because I'm hoping to make it hot reloadable at some point. It's not at the moment, but at some point I'm hoping to make it hot reloadable. So cool. I'm going to look at the latest code. Thanks. All right, perfect. Yeah. So if you look at the latest code, it's a lot simpler to run than it was earlier, in earlier versions of it, right? Let's see. Let me catch up on the YouTube chat here. First time catching this live. I've been following the Kohi series closely and re-implementing everything in Rust. Oh, that's cool. Okay. That would be interesting to see. Just finished the Vulkan setup and started light and loading models. Nice. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'm very interested to see what various languages people port this to. I've heard now a couple of times of people doing Rust. A lot of people use C++ instead of C. But yeah, that's cool. And now I guess we've got somebody working on sort of a version of it in Swift, which is kind of cool. Thanks for sharing. Really impressive. I'm glad you like it. Oh, posture check, redeem. I'm slouching in my chair. That's bad. My back already hurts. I should probably not be doing that, right? Okay. So, let me see. I think there was another question up here that I missed from earlier. I feel like there was anyways. Oh, TS Tanisel. If function pointer, then if function pointer is not equal to SUI no op. Yeah, I could use a no op instead of that, right? Instead of just checking this, but like this is just checking against 0, so it's not really that much different, I guess. I mean, it's actually really no different, other than technically just checking against an address instead of checking against 0, right? So, let's see. What would you recommend as an ECS system, or would you recommend against it? I generally recommend against ECS. I know the Cherno has had a lot of luck with a library called ENTT, or ENT, I think is as he calls it. I can't really talk about that because I've not used it myself. I generally think that entity complication systems, as I like to call them now, they tend to overcomplicate things, right? Most engines don't really need that. They don't really need all of that extra overhead and structure behind an entity component system. Most games that are made by, especially made by indies, right, are fairly simple and don't need those complex hierarchies, right? In terms of Kohi, what we're actually going to do is we are going to implement one, but it's going to be as a plugin. So it's not going to be included in the core logic. So we're going to use our sort of plugin system as we've been doing with a lot of other things here. And that way, if we have a project that warrants it, we can use it. But if we don't, we're not going to use it, right? And I think that just makes the most sense. But yeah, ordinarily speaking, I don't really recommend using an ECS. You know, I get it. I get that, you know, it makes things easier to wrap your head around, but that's not necessarily better from a code perspective, right? They tend to lead to lots of memory fragmentation and things like that. It's just generally not worth it, right? So, oh, Flex. Yes, I've heard of Flex as well. But yeah, so there's your answer, right? I hope that makes sense. You know, everything has its purpose, right? But I don't necessarily think that ECSs always make sense. And Coffee Lava, I know that you are a huge proponent of ECS. That's like your favorite thing. I know without ECS you'd be lost, right? Or is that a bannable term on your channel? Is that like saying VS Code? You know, like, wow, that beep was super late. What the heck? Stream Deck fail. ECS is a good exercise to implement by yourself. You learn a lot by cache coherence and data locality. That is true, if you do it the right way. Absolutely. You need ECS to parse your strings. I think I'm about to get a migraine from that sentence, honestly. That's painful, man. Who made you this way? All right. So I think we've converted all of these over to how they need to be. So let me take a look at... let's see. I think it was the button that had... had these things. Right, so these are now void. Oops. Yeah, I think those are the only ones actually in the header file at the moment. Yeah, okay. Oh, strings, yeah. Strings, I mean, we have our own string library that we're working on, right? And like, the one thing that I kind of wish that C had, that C++ does, is the ability to be able to create strings, or to be able to hash strings at compile time. Kind of sucks that C doesn't have that. But, you know, maybe we'll actually rectify that and write our own system for that. Okay. I think all of this is hooked up correctly. I think we're done pretty much with this. So we'll say mouse. We'll start here. So we'll say void. Why is... Oh, here we go. Okay, so we need this. We need this. And of course, all of those are going to bleat because we're returning booleans and we don't need to. Right, so... Actually, we should probably just say if self. Do that, right? That's probably going to be a lot better. Let me get rid of that. That was almost a nasty bug. So we get rid of all these negative checks here. And move this down here. Delete that. Delete that. Delete that. All right. So we've got that. Let's see. Did you end up doing multi-threaded and or lock-free code yet? I do have the job system, so we do have multi-threaded code. Yes. So we have a job system, and also the audio plugin makes use of threads as well. So yeah. I pretty much ban strings in the core of my engine. Yeah, that's essentially what's happening here too. The only place that I really use strings for much of anything is configuration parsing, and that's it. And even with that, a lot of my resource loaders have the ability to parse a sort of human readable or non-compiled version of the asset and a binary version of the asset. And so like our meshes, whenever we load in a mesh, we call that importing a mesh. So like if we import an OBJ, for example, we import that OBJ, convert it to our internal format, and then write that whole thing out as a binary blob to disk. And then the next time we load it, we could just load that binary version. So the only place we actually use strings is to load up those sort of human readable versions. And that's in the core now because we don't have an editor. So eventually what's going to happen is once we get the editor set up, the editor will be responsible for making all those conversions, and the editor will output all of those binary assets, and then the runtime engine itself will only be responsible for reading in those binary assets, right? And so that's essentially what we're doing. Did I use lock-free code in there? We use mutexes for most of it. But yeah, I mean, as far as the job system goes, we basically spin up a pool of threads, right? And we keep those threads alive, and we just check every so often, is there anything running on this particular thread? Is there anything running on this particular thread? And if there's not, then we say, okay, well, here's a job for you. Go ahead and run that. And those threads are detached, right? So They're never being waited on or anything like that. And even actually the audio plugin threads are actually detached as well. So yeah, there's no waits on those, which in fact might be an issue at some point. And so we may actually want to have some way to be able to wait on a job before executing another job. We don't really have the ability yet to sort of chain them, right? So eventually we'll probably need to do a little bit of additions there. But yeah, we do have a lot of that stuff in place. And in fact, our texture loading, our mesh loading, all that stuff is already all multi-threaded. So when we load up our scene, that's being done on multiple threads already. The only place I have a string is where I'm forced to opening a file. Yep, pretty much. I don't really use them a lot here. I have names on stuff, but most of that is for error reporting, right? And a lot of the error reports are going to become no-ops when we actually build a release build. So my English is garbage today. I'm very tired. My English is garbage every single day. And it's my primary language, so don't feel bad about it. My English is always rubbish. Believe me. I trip over my words and screw them up all the time. As you'll see here on stream. I screw up my words and I screw up my code and I'm not worried about it. Fix it. Alright. Let me think. So, I don't think I'm going to have to update any of my function pointers should all be good. Let me think. I'm just trying to think of what else I need to update to make that actual update work. Yeah, so these guys don't work because we don't have them in the header file yet. That's fine. Yeah, okay, so these guys need to be converted to void. And I'll just get rid of this for now and take this and move it down. Okay, so I'm trying to think at this point. We should be able to like render a text box control, I think, at this point. So let's test that theory. Let's go over to our debug console. And we're going to have to remove all this key logic as well. Debug console, when we create, I guess actually we add the controls when we load, don't we? So we're adding the console background panel, then we're adding the text in front of that, the scrollable text. And then this is going to be the entry box. So this is what we're going to be replacing. I think instead of replacing this, I think I'm going to create the text box kind of next to it. And the reason for that is because I don't want to like break the console while I'm sort of doing the rest of this stuff, right? So I'm going to rename this label. This is the old one. Right, so actually I'll even say old one, new one. All right, we're going to have, instead of label control, text box control. Oh, you know what? I didn't export these functions, did I? Whoopsie. I need to actually export these functions and solve this too. So I can start here. Drag this all the way down to here. Right, and slam these in here. Okay. I'm basically just adding these to the header file because I didn't do that yet. So we can't really use them outside of that file unless we actually do that, which is not so useful. Right, so we just need to do this. I can fill in the comments off camera. I'm not really worried about doing that on camera. You guys don't need to watch me write comments, right? All we really care about is, does this stuff work? All right, so that should take us back to here. Textbox control render doesn't work. Really? Oh, I typed... Really? So that means it's going to be wrong here too. See, I get talking sometimes, and I'll say one word and mean to type another and type the wrong thing. Have I figured out the plural of data yet? Nope. Because data is basically singular and plural at the same time. It's rubbish. I hate it. Are you using the container of pattern in Kohi? Can you kind of describe what you mean by the container of? I don't think I've heard of it referred to that way, so I probably know what you're talking about, but I might just not know it as that. It's a macro in the Linux kernel. Can't say I know anything about it, to be completely honest. But I'll tell you what I will do. I will pull it up on Google and read about it. That way, the next time we talk about it, I will know what you're referring to. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not going to read about that here on the stream, but yeah, I could see it's some sort of pattern for, looks like containing things, I guess. Okay. Cool. I'll have to look into that. It allows you to convert a pointer to a struct member of a pointer of... Wait. Pointer to struct member to a pointer of parent struct. Oh. Interesting. Okay. I can see how that'd be useful. So I might redefine a version of that in my library. I wouldn't want to necessarily use the Linux specific version of that because that would only work on Linux, but I could see how that'd be useful. Okay. So this is Textbox control. Create. So for that, I think we only need a couple actual properties. So for that one, we just need a name. Oh, well, actually, we do actually need some of this other stuff too. Because we're kind of hard coding a lot of stuff in here, which is not great, right? So we should probably like know what font do we want to use? What size do we want to use? What should the original text be? What sort of... Okay, so we need to actually pass in a couple more properties here. So, we need to add font type, font name, right? And U16 font size. So this is like one of those examples where like a string is used, right, at this level. But this isn't core engine level either. You know, it's kind of an extension, so I'm okay with it. It's great for implementing type-safe inheritance without void pointer. Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Inheritance isn't really something I'm doing too much of. The UI system is kind of touching on it, so it might be useful here, but like it's not something I generally make all that much use of. But yeah, it does look like it'd be really useful for this. So I might be able to, you know, snag a version of that and just kind of define a Kohi version of it and use it in the code base instead. Let's see. Let me just check the YouTube chat. YouTube chat is not quite as active, but that's okay. So for you guys out there, this is an interactive stream, by the way. So I know I'm mostly talking to the Twitch folks here, but if you guys on the YouTube side have anything, you know, any questions about what we're doing, or things you want to discuss, you know, this is an interactive stream. We like to kind of talk about different stuff here, in addition to what we're just, you know, actively working on. As long as it's sort of semi-pseudo related, you know, we're cool with that here. So just wanted to point that out. All right. So we probably need to take this definition and go back to the UI system header and put it right here. Textbox control create. It's easier just to copy the whole thing, right? So we have that, which means that we can now actually go back to this and pass through the type, font name, font size. Oh, we didn't add the initial text to that, did we? We did not. Let me get this. Initial. I'm just going to call it text. Right. And so we can do text. Right. We'll go back here to create. And we'll say text. And what that should do for us is over here basically allow this to be a drop-in replacement. So we should be able to say textbox control create. Entry textbox is the name of the control. We want to use system text. This is the name of the font we want to use. Font size is declared above. Our initial text is going to be something, just so we can see something there. Entry control. So we need to peek definition on that because we actually need to add. We need to add SUI control, and we're going to call this one entry text box. So we'll say text box. We'll say entry text box control for the debug console. Entry text box, text box, text box. Well, one more. Okay. So I think that makes sense. And this actually, I'm going to move this up here. And actually, I'm going to paste a copy of it down here too. And we're just going to use entry text box. Oops. And we'll do line display count plus 2, right? We'll really place it further down away from all the rest of it so that we can really see it separate from everything else. Okay. So I think we've done what we need to do. Let's see if we missed anything in the build. Looks like we did. Oh, right, our function handler in the testbed main, line 678. Go to definition. This needs to be void. And then what we can do is remove this, move that here. We wanted configurable event propagation, but I don't think I'm going to worry about that for the moment. And then we'll say if self, do that. Neg Vorsa, first time chat. Hello, just to say hi. Welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here. Hope you're enjoying the stream and learning some stuff along with us. All right, let me actually try to run this real fast. I just need to make sure I have the correct directory open here. So we're going to debug using this and see what we get. I'm going to have to turn the audio back off. I forgot I turned it on to demo something last night. Our engine has audio, by the way. So let's see. Do we have... Is our text box showing up? I am not seeing our text box. Okay. So I'm not seeing our text box. Before I do anything else, let me do music. And turn these two things off. So that way we're not getting blown away by music as soon as we do that. Okay. And so we can look at this a little bit longer here. So I don't see our something text box here. So that's interesting. Let me try and think what I might have done where we missed that. So in our debug console, we set the position of our entry text box. It's active. I don't think we got any errors, but let me double check that actually, because maybe we did. All right, so let's just have a quick look in here just to make sure we didn't actually get any errors. It doesn't look like we did, though. We have a few warnings from shaders. Okay, so that doesn't look like we got any warnings from that. Oh. Copy pasta issue. We are calling the wrong version of that, right? So we needed to call Textbox control create, but then Textbox control load, right? Which technically we shouldn't even have to do that, right? Technically we should be able to just do state entry Textbox load, right? We probably should be doing that, actually. Instead of calling these versions of it, right? So actually, let's go ahead and do that, actually. So we'll say if not load, and we have to pass state entry text box there, right? We should probably get in the habit of doing that. Oh, we have ads. So I just like to break for ads so that nobody misses any content. So specifically on the Twitch side of things, ads run every once in a while, and I can't like bat them away or anything like that, but it does tell me when they're running. So because this is a programming stream, I try not to have folks miss things, miss content while the ads are actually running. Not everybody gets ads, but for those who do, I don't want them to miss out, right? So what we do here is we pause the stream for anywhere from about a minute to 2 minutes, depending on how long the ad break is. In this case, it's closer to 2 minutes. And then we resume as soon as that is done. So in this case, we've got about a minute left on ads. And it also kind of gives me a minute to step away. So. Yeah, I don't need the else block, Taman. Yeah, you're right. We got about 15 more seconds, and then we'll be able to continue. All right, cool. And we are back. So, you don't even need this else block. Yeah, no. I mean, I suppose I could just do all this under the if block, right? The only thing is I'm trying to catch this at each of the individual stages. Like, this whole thing is only temporary anyways. Once we actually set up sort of UI scenes, for lack of a better term, once we actually get that set up, that's going to manage the life cycle of all of this stuff. So we'll be able to basically just set up a configuration for what our UI should look like and throw that at the UI system and say, here, do this. And then it should load up all this stuff. So these calls to all of this are very temporary, right? So I'm not really too concerned with how like clean all of this really looks. Okay, so none of the rest of these are specific to the typing control. So I think that was probably the issue. Off topic about shaders. Assuming that they are still compiled externally, is there any plan to have them built dynamically, like write them in C and be able to build Spurvy at runtime or vice versa? So that is something that I've kind of considered, but I don't know that the value is going to 100% be there for cross-platform. So the issue with that is Vulkan isn't our only backend, right? I mean, it is right now, but it's not going to be. We're also going to have backends for probably OpenGL, definitely DirectX, and most likely metal. And all of those work a little bit differently. And so the problem is like, don't want to necessarily have to generalize that process if it's not something that's going to work with those other graphics APIs. So if I go to do something like that, I also have to think about, okay, well, how would I do this? Or is this even supported on the other APIs? Or should I just, not sort of do that? So we don't actually have to compile our shaders in Kohi externally anymore. That is a requirement I got rid of a little while ago. And I rolled the shader compilation into the engine itself. So when you actually load it up, it loads the shaders from the GLSL file, similar to how OpenGL does it. So we don't have that sort of external. You don't have to write that run a command line thing to compile it to SPV first. That's all done during runtime now. We may, for our release builds, have the ability to just load up the SPV files, but yeah, at least for right now, we can do it dynamically. The only thing I don't have is shader hot reloading, but I can't imagine that would take too much to actually handle. So yeah, I hope that answers your question in a kind of roundabout sort of way. All right, so let's run this real quick. And we'll open up console. There we go. So we got our text box here. Our something is misaligned. So that's interesting. But it looks like our text box is actually showing up here now. So I'm not sure why the something is there. Instead of, oh, I know why it is. I know why it is. Because the geometry for the text actually is bottom up versus the geometry for the 9-slice is top down. So I'm actually going to have to compensate for that. So I'm going to have to offset the position of the text by the font size, and that should align it. Okay, that actually kind of does make sense. So the way I'm going to do that is in standard UI system. When we go to load. Let's see, we set up the parenting here. And so this is probably where we would also edit the transform for that. So let's see. I guess we could do it at any point here, but I think we'll do it after we add the child, right? So we'll do it in here. Transform position set, right? And the transform we're looking for is the address of typed data content label xform, and we want a position vec3. We're going to bump this over to the left a little bit, so we'll say like I don't know, 5.0. And then let's see. Type data. We have to carry over the font size somehow, which I don't think we're actually currently doing. So technically what I'm going to need is SUI label internal state, or internal data. Label data equals type data content label internal data, right? And then we can say here label data data, which is going to be the font data, because I don't think we store it anywhere else. Yep. And then size. I think size was, should use size or line height maybe. Well, let's go size for now. So we have that. We'll convert that to an F32, And then, of course, we'll use 0 for the z-axis. That needs to be here. Okay, so that should do it. All right. Let's see what we get. Okay, that's better aligned. It's not perfect. Maybe we do need to use the line height, right? So let me actually I'm trying to think what is going to be the best way to do this, right? Because this G hangs down, but we might also have capital letters and stuff that hang upwards. So let me change the default text here from something to a couple W's, couple M's, right? I think those should probably be the tallest characters we have, and then we have just a couple of lower hanging characters here, right? So I'm just going to actually do this. Put in some random stuff, some numbers, just so we kind of have a decent sample size as to what we might be looking at. Yeah, that should be. All right. Just because before I go moving this around any further, I want to see what some of these other characters look like. Okay, so yeah, it definitely could stand to go up. It looks like it's baselined off of this, right? So the font size is basically going to get us the bottom of that. So if we want less than that, and we're going to base the height of this based off the font size, we probably need to bump that up by a set amount. So there's a couple things to consider here. We probably ought to, let's see, what are we doing for the size? We are hard coding this for now. So the size probably ought to be based off of font size, right? And maybe we say font size plus 4. That way we've got padding on both sides. And then when we actually go to load this, we should already have the right size there. Probably ought to transform position sets. So we want to do size. I wonder if we do size essentially divided by 2, right? So 0.5. But then we also do typed data height times 0.5. And we or should we not do that? I'm trying to think of what the algorithm should be here. So maybe we just use height minus, what is it, type data dot size height. So maybe we use the size of it minus half the font size. Or maybe we say half the line height, right? I don't know if that's going to work either. We're just going to have to sort of trial and error it, and then whatever looks the best will probably wind up working for all fonts, right? I'm thinking. Once we figure out what it is. Yeah, so that's a little bit better. I wonder what the line height versus the font size is, though. I should probably look at that. SUI text load. Let's have a look at... Let's have a look at this. I'm going to set a breakpoint here so that when we load that, we can actually see what this data is. So the line height on this is... Oh, the line height is the same as the font size. Okay. So I guess at this point... So if the line height is... Do I take... The size Y is 35. So maybe I take half of this, which should move us halfway down the container, and then add half the line height to it. Maybe that'll be right. Trial and error, I guess, right? All right. See how this looks. We'll skip past this. Well, that looks like poop. What I really need to know is so the line height. I wonder if I can literally do something as simple as I wonder if I can do let's see, I guess this would need to be use the line height by itself. So if I move it down by the line height and then subtract like the padding that we had, which was like the 2.0 from it, maybe that would work. That's better. Maybe I need to subtract the whole padding from it. So maybe this needs to be a 4. Once we figure it out, I don't think there's going to be much room for changing it around. I don't think there'd be much need, rather. There we go. That looks pretty good. It's not perfect. It's not perfect, but I think I can live with it for now. Does look like we need to actually move it over to the right a little bit, though. So we probably ought to move it over to the right by the corner size, I'm thinking, because that's what an edge should also take. So instead of 5, that's going to technically wind up being 10, but instead of hard coding it, I'm going to say typed data. Do we have... We do have corner size. There it is. Why is that bleating? Oh. Because I need the corner size X. Right. Okay, so I think that should give me enough to work with for now. I'm going to put it to do adjustable padding, right? Because we eventually want to be able to sort of style this a little bit. Kind of like what you would do with like CSS or something like that. But for now, I'm not gonna put that in there. I just want to get it working for now. All right. And so let's just see if this looks correct. I think it will. Yeah, that looks pretty good, I think. So the next thing that we need to do is, right now, our sort of text box is actually this hidden little space right here, right? So if I type exit, like that comes up here. And that's because we're doing a bunch of hacking sort of in this debug console, right? So what we need to do is we need to take the logic that handles this text entry and backspacing and all that stuff and implement it here in our text box so that we can actually type into it. And obviously we'll need to handle like pasting and stuff like that at a future point. But for now, we just want to make it so that we can at least type into it. So that's going to be the next thing. So in here, we have this basically huge event where we handle key presses, right? And so I think at this point, we need to think about how we want to move all this stuff over to our actual text box, right? And in theory, some of this stuff is going to be implemented in the base, and some of it is going to be implemented by the consumer. So this enter logic, for example, should not be moved over because what that basically does is it creates a command, enters it into the command history, and then executes that command in the console, which is something that has nothing to do with the text box, right? And then we reset the label of that text box, right? So this should not be moved, but like our backspace key makes sense to move, right? Because that's modifying the text, right? And then our logic for A to Z and 0 to 9, and adding those key codes, that should all be moved over. There's probably a cleaner way we can do this, but for now I'm just going to brute force it. Space minus key equal, like all these things can be moved over. If character code is not equal to 0, let's see, what are we doing here? Okay, we're doing a string format, so we're basically appending that text onto the end. So this is not necessarily something I want to move either, simply because depending on where we are within that string, we might need to actually handle that a little bit different. Like we might need to insert a character in the middle of the string versus at the end. And so this is not something I would probably want to move over either, because this only accounts for the end, not the middle. So I hope that makes sense. So I guess probably keep command history up, down to navigate it. Okay, that's something we don't need to move over either. So really there's only like a very small part of this that we're actually going to have to move over. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm just going to take this whole top part of this. Actually, I'm going to take the whole function. And I'm going to come over here to where we have our text box functions. And I'm going to paste this. I think I'm going to put this at the bottom, actually. So I'll put this here. And I'm going to call this SUI text box on key. And let's see. So we're not going to do any of this stuff. We'll check the key to see if it's pressed. We're only going to handle key presses on this. I don't think we're going to handle key releases. That doesn't really make sense. So we determine if shift is held. That's needed. If key code equals enter. So we're going to go ahead and remove that, actually. So if the key is backspace, first of all, listener instance is going to wind up being the text control itself. So SUI control self equals listener instance, right? Let's see. So this, we're actually getting the text from this. And we're just modifying the string. So I'm actually going to comment this for now, because this is not the way we want to handle the backspace either. So we'll come back to that. We'll get key codes working first. So let's see. So all this should be fine. Get rid of that. And then this, actually I'm going to say hack and to do. Fix input from any position. We just kind of want to get this working first, and then we'll worry about the specifics of it later. So we're going to say self self. Right, that should do. And then when we load up a text box, we are going to go ahead and check or hook up that event, right? So when we load, after all this other stuff is done successfully, then we're going to say event system, or event register rather, event code key pressed. The listener is going to be self, and the event is going to be SUI text box on key. Right, and technically we're going to do press and release here. Even though we're technically not using release, I'm going to forget to hook it up later if we don't do that. So we need to actually take this and forward declare it. So we'll do that right above create. So right here. Right? So we should be able to do that now. When we unload, we should probably unregister these, right? Unregister. Unregister. Okay. And obviously there's a lot more to be done there. I just want to catch that case. All right. So the other thing that we need to figure out is when we actually go to process this event, we should figure out if the control is focused, which we don't actually have logic for right now, but we're about to. So if not, we should probably move this up. Self.is. Shoot, do we not have focused? We don't. Okay. So we really need to convert this to flags at some point, because this is getting kind of annoying with all these booleans, and kind of wasteful, frankly, but is focused. Actually, that's poop. I don't want to do that. I actually want to go into the UI state itself. The better way to do this actually is going to be U64 focused ID. And when we initialize the system, Vandito, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome to the stream. How are you doing tonight? Let's see. We're going to set the, whoops. We're going to set the typed state. Focused ID to invalid ID U64. And then all we have to do in here is say, let's see, do we not have, we probably don't have the state, do we? We're getting it here somewhere. There we go. So we need this here. And we can say if typed state focused ID is equal to self.id.unique ID. Actually, I guess we'll just boot out early. We'll say if it's not equal, right? So unless we have a match, meaning that this control is actually focused, we're not going to allow anything to happen here, right? And that should do it. And then I guess the other thing that we can do is we can actually hook up like a keyboard event to this to allow us to override like the enter functionality and stuff like that. And then the user can either add that functionality or not if they want it for that particular event. And so we can basically just say on key and then determine key pressed or not, and then come here and execute like logic that looks like this, right? I think that makes the most sense. So we need a couple things. So the first thing is we need some function pointers here. So we have on key, struct sui control self, and then we don't have a key event, do we? We do not. So let's define one. Type def struct sui key event. I guess we could call it keyboard event. Sui keyboard event. We could say keys. Key, right? And then we can say, what is the type for that? I think we have it in here somewhere. I guess it's actually an event type, isn't it? So let's do a type def enum sui keyboard event type. Right, and we'll call this sui keyboard event type press. And whoops, release. And then here we can say sui keyboard event type. So now we know the keys and the type. Which basically lines up with this guy. I think that's probably enough for now. We can always extend it if we need to. I think that's good enough. Okay, so we have our SUI keyboard event to go here. So struct SUI keyboard event. And this will be user overridable. And we're not going to bother with one of these internal ones because we're actually responding to an event already internally. So when we do on key, what we'll do is we'll process this sort of internal stuff first. And then we'll say if self.onKey, and then we'll pass self, and we need to do a SUI keyboard event. EVT key equals key. EVT type equals, and then we could just check this, right? So we can go, we can say if code is pressed, then we want to use SUI key event type press. Otherwise, we use SUI key event type release. What am I missing here? Oh, that belongs on the line above it. There, and now we can say EVT here. Undeclared identifier key. Do we not? Oh, key code. Did we not, it's key code, key code, key code. Here we go. Okay, we need to move this up. Oops, wrong button on that. We need to move this up there. Yep, we got ads. So we're just going to take a quick ad break really quickly. Just a couple minutes here. So for those of you who can still hear me, we're just going to break the stream just for a couple minutes here for ads, because ads run on Twitch every once in a while, and I don't want to have you guys miss any of the content while ads are running. So even though the ads don't technically run on the YouTube side of things, I want to go ahead and you know, it's the same stream on both sides, so I just pause it so that I'm sure that nobody actually misses anything. Incidentally, if you guys have any questions or comments or things you want to discuss, feel free to jump in the chat, either side. I'm watching both YouTube chat and Twitch chat. So if you guys have any questions about stuff or you just want to talk about something, feel free to jump in. This is supposed to be an interactive stream, right? So I like talking with you guys. I like having conversations and stuff, talking about different things. As long as it's reasonably related to what we're talking about here, it's all good, right? Okay, so we got about 15 seconds on the ads and then we can continue. All right, and we are back. So thank you guys for bearing with me there. I just like to pause the stream so that nobody misses any content while ads are running. All right. So I think at this point, so if we have an on-key user function set up, we go ahead and call that. Mandax, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. And welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here. So, I guess over on the debug side, we'll have to hook up an on-key event to handle like the enter press and things like that. So debug console. So instead of like this whole debug console on key thing, we can actually kind of do away with that now because most of that's handled by our text box. With the exception of basically this section of code right here. Everything else, I think, actually got moved over to the text box. So, what we'll do is, first off, we have in here somewhere, so we're key pressed and released. We no longer need to listen to those here. So we can kill those for now. In the destroy, I think we're actually unregistering those things. Yeah, so here and here. And there and there. And let's see, we should probably go ahead and set up this function now. So we'll say void debug console entry box. on key. And we'll say SUI control self, and then SUI keyboard event EVT. And we're going to mark this as static because we're not going to need it outside of here. And so let's see, on lib load, this is for hot reloading, right? So that it doesn't mess up for that. We're going to say state entry text box on key equals debug console entry box on key, right? We'll just get rid of that stuff, right? And then here when we unload the lib, we will just set this to 0, right? And then by context as well, debug console on key. There was one other place we set this as well, which is here. So we want to actually do this here. And this is going to be out console state. And we're going to set that up there. This also does mean that we are going to have to do a forward declaration of this at the top. So go ahead and set that up here. Right, so we've got that. So go to the definition of this, and actually, essentially, we're going to take this bit, this whole enter section, right, and go back down here. And we're going to take a look at the event instead. So we're going to say if EVT dot type equals SUI keyboard event type press. Then we're going to say key code is equal to EVT key. We can check input for this stuff. Key code is enter, right? And so this is what we actually want to keep. One more I think we need. Right. And then instead of clearing the entry control text, we will go ahead and say text box get text. Do we not have that? I thought we did. Could have swore we did actually. Maybe we don't. Apparently we don't. Okay, so that's kind of important. We are going to need that. So we can do... let's see. We want UI system H. Let's put this... basically a copy of this function, but not quite. Let's put it right after render. I guess that makes sense, right? We're going to call this text box. And we'll go to definition on this guy. Paste this right here. If not self, turn 0. Otherwise, we need to get the typed data. And then we want to return SUI label text get address of typed data content label. Right, so it just kind of reaches through one layer there and gets that. So that should give us what we need there. SUI textbox text get. And this should be entry. Oh yeah, it should be entry control actually. Why is this bleating? Implicit declarations. Okay. I'm not sure why it still thinks that, but maybe I didn't write the header file or something. No matter. I think when I build it, it'll figure it out. Hey, when you have a moment, can you explain the structure of the game engine in very high level? No rush if you're focused right now. It's cool if you can't. I'm new around here and just curious. Thanks. Well, first off, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I can definitely answer that. Let me finish this block of code, and then I will jump back to that. Can we get a breakdown of your Vim and tmux config? Yes, I can do that as well. But let me go ahead and finish this block of code real quick, just to get it out of my mind, and then I can definitely jump on that for you. Okay, so, all right, we don't have the state here, do we? So we need to actually get the state. Were we keeping that static? I don't think we were. So I am going to need some way to hold on to the state, or to get the state of that in that event. How am I going to do that? So the load. So that is an interesting conundrum, actually. Because I don't actually have a way to quickly grab the state at this level. And I say at this level because this is the event handler that comes from the control itself. The control does not have access to the debug console state. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to do that. Probably the best way to do it would be to have like the ability to have like user data on the control itself and then just pluck it out of there. I mean, this, so for this is going to be self. But yeah, I still need it for this. This, though, is self. SUI label text set. That's not going to be correct either. That's going to have to be Textbox text set, which we also don't have. Okay. So I've got a couple of things to handle there. So, all right. So let me jump into the questions in the order that I saw them come through, right? Because one's from YouTube, one's from Twitch. So I will go over the engine architecture first. So the best way to look at this is from a from a file tree perspective, I guess, right? Fujimoto, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. So I'm actually just about to sort of recap what the engine architecture is. So the whole engine is written in C. Everything here is from scratch except for a couple of caveats that I will bring up here in a moment. So the file structure of all of this is pretty flat for the most part. So what we have is we have a series of shared libraries and then a series of executables. And so the engine itself is actually a shared library. So that'd be like a DLL on Windows or an SO on Linux or a dylib on Mac. And so the engine itself contains all of the core code of the engine, things like the math library, our containers, like our dynamic arrays, hash tables, things like that. All of our memory functions, so all of our custom allocators, things of that nature. Our renderer front end, our audio front end, our resource management, so things like loading up assets, things like that. And then a lot of our various internal systems. So, our audio system is like our audio front end, camera system, font system, geometry system. We have all these various systems, right? And so all of those things exist in the engine core. And so the engine core sits as a library, and that is ultimately consumed by an application and or other libraries, right? And so the only things that we are using that are not actually written by me in here are under vendor. We're using, right now, we're using STB image and STB TrueType, and that's to load various different image formats, because that's a very lengthy, long, and complex thing that really there wasn't a whole lot of value in investigating that in a live stream format. And same for TrueType, that is to load font files, right? So other than that, everything else in there is completely written by me. That also handles has all of our platform code. So right now, our Win32 code, our macOS code, our Linux code, and then some logic that's shared between these two guys, right? So that's the kind of thing that is an engine. And then from engine, we have what is known as the test bed. This is actually an application that consumes that engine, right? So our applications are extremely lightweight in this design. And all they actually do is they load up a bunch of function pointers from dynamic libraries. So for example, our testbed also has a testbed lib. So this is a shared library. And this is where all of our application code exists. So if you're writing a game, this is where your game code would exist, right? And the advantage of doing it this way versus all in the application is this is actually hot reloadable. So we can actually we can compile this testbed lib on the fly while testbed is actually running, and that code will just update. Now there are exceptions to that, but that's basically the general idea. Now you heard me mention something like our audio front end and our audio back end. What do I mean by that? So the engine doesn't know whether we're using Vulkan, doesn't know whether we're using OpenGL, DirectX. It doesn't care, right? It only references things that are exposed to it by what I call a renderer front end. The renderer back end is where all of the renderer, or I should say graphics API stuff exists. So we have a Vulkan renderer here. This is a Vulkan renderer plugin. And so the application determines what renderer it wants to use, what renderer backend it wants to use. Right now, Vulkan's the only option. But basically, the Vulkan renderer plugin hooks into the engine and says, okay, renderer front end, I am going to be the backend. You can pass me all the commands and all the data that you want to load and the GPU, things like that. And I will go ahead and handle that. And so it separates those two layers, but also makes it extensible so that if we want to have a different renderer backend, like eventually we're going to do DirectX, we'll have another one of these libraries where we can say, okay, this is where all of our DirectX logic is going to live. And they're completely separate from one another. And it's up to the application as to which one it actually wants to use and when. So the application can do a little bit of detection and do it dynamically, or you can just have an actual build that that chooses which one, right? The other advantage to doing it that way is we could technically have a headless renderer backend where maybe there is no actual graphics API behind it at all. It's just empty. And the advantage to doing that is if you wanted to run unit tests or something like that, that required the engine to actually be stood up, but you don't actually need things to render to the screen, that would be a way that you could approach that, right? And so that's our Vulkan renderer. That's a plugin. And then our audio system is also a plugin. So we have a audio plugin here that uses OpenAL as its backend. So you could use this one, or if you wanted to use direct audio, or you wanted to use Fmod or WIs or something like that, you could implement those as plugins to the engine, and it automatically just kind of picks up and runs with it based on whichever one you actually tell it you want to use. Sakella's Music and Cookies. Hello, welcome to you both. Welcome, guys. I'm just giving a brief overview of the engine architecture, right? And so the whole idea behind the design of this engine is that a lot of things are going to wind up being plugins, right? We don't actually have it in this branch that I'm working on, but there is going to be an editor application with an editor library of code. And that's going to make use of what we're building right now, which is the standard UI. The standard UI is one of a few UI systems that we're actually going to be building in the engine. So the standard UI is going to give you your standard things like your buttons, your text boxes, your check boxes, your radio buttons, scrolling containers, things like that. Something an editor might use, right? A drop-down debug console panel, right? But your game might not necessarily need those controls, right? And so a game might not necessarily use the standard UI, but an editor might, right? And an editor is just another application that consumes the engine and that uses these various things. And so by having this sort of modular plugin system that we've got going here, we can use what we want when we want to use it and nothing more, right? And so it keeps things very flexible, very decoupled from one another. So that is basically a very, very high level overview of what we're doing. So I hope that answers your question. Let me know if you have any other questions on that. But yeah, that should pretty much do it. Yeah, you fixed your graph implementation. Awesome, Taman. That's awesome. I'm glad you got that working. Okay, so Vim and Tmux config. So unfortunately, right now, I had to switch to my Windows setup, so I'm not actually on my Linux setup at the moment, so I can't really go over my Tmux stuff because Windows being lame like it is, does not, there's no Tmux for Windows, right? But what I can do is pull up my my Vim config. So just give me a second here to pull up another terminal. And now I have to remember actually where my configuration is. Let's see, because it's different on Windows, and I don't normally stream on Windows. I've actually not done it in quite a while. So it takes me a second to remember where stuff is on Windows, because not everything is just in like slash, you know, or in tilde rather. Okay. Maybe just make sure that I have. Okay. So this here is my NeoVim setup. And I'm going to walk through this pretty quickly, right? Because there's a lot to it, right? It's a 700 line file, config file, right? Yeah, talking about game engine structure isn't that exciting like talking about 3D model animation. Yeah, well, I mean, that depends, right? So I basically just have, you know, all these settings that you're probably already familiar with if you've done Vim config before with like line numbers and stuff like that. And so I basically have my leader key as space. And then I've got a little bit of OS detection here for pathing and stuff like that. And then here I've got a whole bunch of key maps set up with like descriptions and all that. So if I want to like if I forget what the key mapping is, I can actually search for it. So I've got a bunch of those set up in here, a lot actually. I make heavy use of telescope for fuzzy finding. So that's this guy, right? So I use that a lot, and you'll see there's a lot of stuff in here having to do with that. I use LSP Saga and Mason and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And so these are all my key bindings. And I do have DAP Debugger, although it's currently disabled. But I do have DAP UI available as well for debugging in C. It works, but I'm not 100% comfortable with it, right? So pros and cons there. This is color scheme stuff. So color scheme I'm using is a theme called Adawada. So I like that one quite a lot because it's high contrast. It's easy to see on smaller displays. So that's kind of nice. I have something called Comment that I use. In fact, I should probably actually... I'm starting this in the wrong sort of order here. So our plugin setup, these are all the plugins I'm actually using. So my plugin manager is Packer, right? And then here's my theme. Tmux Navigator I have, which obviously doesn't apply in Windows, but that's there as well. I have some replace and surround stuff. I don't actually use these all that often. I don't know why, I just don't. I guess I've just been typing this stuff manually sometimes for so long that I just don't anymore. This is to be able to comment stuff quickly. I use NVim tree, that's what this guy is over here on the side. Web dev icons, that's how I'm getting all these little guys here. Lua line, that's this guy at the bottom. Fuzzy finding, so this is for our telescope stuff, right? That's this guy, right? So I can search by file name, right? Or if I want to search by files, I can hit FS and then just start typing, right? And it just kind of matches on everything. And it's very fast. It uses ripgrep in the back end. And then I have, for autocomplete, I have mvim comp and comp buffer, as well as a language server. I use LuaSnip, comp LuaSnip, friendly snippets. I use Mason for installing my LSP servers. And then here are my LSPs, right? So I have NVim LSP, and then LSP Saga, and then one for TypeScript, because I actually use this same config for my work machine too. And I write a lot of TypeScript for work. And then LSP kind, and then formatting linting, I use null.ls, which I'm actually going to have to find a replacement. I use that as sort of a pass between to connect Mason to all that other stuff. All of these guys here. I use tree sitter, right? That's for like the syntax highlighting and all that stuff. Auto pairs and auto tag, I use those sparingly. Get signs is basically for when I have changes over here. To-do comments, this is actually a fork of a repository. The original to-do comments was by somebody else, but I forked it because I had to make a change to it to allow me to type like to-do and hack and fix me and some other ones that I wanted to add. And then NVim DAP is here and the UI for that, right? And so this init Lua is basically the configuration for all of those things. So there's no way I can possibly step through all of this, but what I do have is did I do this as NeoVim? Yeah. So there is a link there, and I will copy it over to YouTube as well, so you guys can see it. That basically, I wrote an article on my site that details in detail my NeoVim setup, right? So it kind of goes through in detail what all those different things are. It's a little bit out of date, but you can also find links to the actual config files themselves there. So that is that. At least as much as I want to go into it on stream now. Yeah, no problem. I hope that helped. Okay. Where were we? So we have SUI textbox text get, which is here. We don't actually have a way to set that though, which is not great. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. So let me do a set here because we're going to need that as well. So const character array text. Yeah, we'll just do void on this, I guess. So if self, we'll do a set on this, and we'll just pass through the text. And grab this. Why are you not going to my header file? Rude. So we have our text get there. We'll put the set here. So now we've got that. All right. The only other issue that we've got to figure out now is this one of obtaining the state. So this was something I was kind of thinking we were eventually going to need anyway. So on the SUI control, we probably had to have some way to assign some sort of user data to this. We have the internal data, right? But maybe we should be able to assign like a pointer to it of some sort. So I'm going to say void pointer user data. And just for good practice, right, in case we have to allocate this for some reason or we need to know the size of it, we're going to say user data size. In this case, we're not actually going to need that, but in other cases we might, right? So when we actually create that text box, which was here, once we successfully load, I believe at this point we should have the actual, we should have the state, right? Yeah, it's just called state. Okay. So once we actually successfully load, all we'll do is we'll set the state entry. Oh wait, I'm on the wrong one. State entry text box user data. We're going to set that equal to state, right? And then we're going to say state entry text box user data equals size of, and this is going to just be debug console state pointer, right? Which is technically the size of any pointer, right? But whoops, that should have been user data size. Okay, so we'll set that there, and then we can just get that on the other side. And that should give us everything that we need. Let's see, where was that? Here. So let's see, we have states. So I guess we can say self user data. And we'll just cast this. We'll just cold cast this, right? So we'll say debug console state pointer. And then history. Oops. Because I think that's actually the only place we actually need that, right? So whenever this allows us basically to say, okay, well, when we do a key press, this is our user code for the key press. If we hit enter, then we go ahead and create a console command, jam that into the history, execute the console command, and move on, right? We also clear out the text. So we have all of those things hooked up, which I believe means that we can actually go up here. And this debug console on key, I think we can actually kill this. But instead of just flat out killing it, I'm going to comment it for right now. Igor Dev, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome. Nivimi. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but hello and welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing all right. White Z9, thank you for the follow and welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing well. All right. Let's see. Do we have any errors in here? I don't think we do. So let's go ahead and build. Shift held. Unused variable, debug console, line 371. That makes sense, actually, because we are not... we don't need that for the enter key press. I'll comment that out just as a reference as to what's there. Okay. Now, in theory, we should be able to type into our text box. So let's see if we got this right or if we crash horribly and did something wrong. So we open this up, and then our text box does not look like it types. Okay, so I must have missed something somewhere. Our old one is sort of disabled, which is good. That means that that's not hooked up anymore. So did we set the... I think we did set the on key. Yep, we did set that right there on load. Okay. Did we set it? Yeah, we set it here too. So we should be good on that stuff. Let's see. If I made a game engine, it'd be for the Chads only, no Windows. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I thought about that, but I'm like, you know, realistically speaking, most people that would want to follow along with this are probably on Windows, right? I do normally actually stream from Linux, but I've been getting super frustrated lately because something with the NVIDIA drivers has just completely like borked my stream a couple of times now. Like my GPU driver just completely shuts itself down. It's super annoying, and I got tired of it. So I did have to switch back to Windows, unfortunately, because I much prefer working in Arch. Arch, by the way. But yeah. Let's see. So, I think we're almost there, though. I just need to figure out why these key events aren't going through. So when we create the debug console, we're setting this here. Maybe we should be doing this later. Maybe we should be doing this maybe during load. Right? So like under here, whenever we actually load it, if we successfully load it, maybe that's what we do. Maybe that's what we do. So state. And we'll have to do this after we assign the user data. But that should be fine. I wonder if that's honestly yet. Feel the pain. Still trying to find my way into game dev on Linux. Yeah, I mean, honestly, up until about a month ago, it was pretty smooth sailing for like well over a year. Yeah, I mean, I had no issues with like Vulkan drivers or anything like that, but it was just, what it was doing is it was basically just locking up my OBS, and then that would, of course, just bring my stream down. Super, super frustrating and annoying. And I'm still going to keep messing with it to see if I can find it, because I'd much rather move back to that. But we got ads. So for those of you who can still hear me, Twitch serves ads, not to everybody, but to a lot of people. So what I do is whenever those are being served, I basically pause the stream for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just to allow those ads to go through, so that anybody that's watching the stream that has ads come up, they're not missing a whole bunch of stuff that's going on, right? So I just like to pause that and kind of give those folks a chance to get past those ads, and then we can jump back into it, right? So I know YouTube doesn't necessarily get those ads, but over here on Twitch, we certainly do. So yeah, that's the reason we paused that, and we've got about a minute left, so just hang tight, and we'll get right back to it. Frankly, if this was like a gaming stream, I probably wouldn't worry about it. But since it's programming and that tends to be pretty contextual, I feel like it's best to just pause. Yep, take a break, exactly. All right, we got about 15 seconds to go, and then we'll be right back at it. All right, and we are back. I just realized that the music actually ran out, so let me start that again. I guess Brave blocks that since I didn't get any ad. So ads on Twitch are actually based off of locale and platform. So sometimes you'll get ads on desktop, but you might not on mobile. And then depending on where you are in the world, if they don't have an ad to actually fill in that slot, you won't get an ad. So it could be that, or more likely just wherever you are in the world, there's just nothing to fill that ad slot, so you don't get any. But yeah, that's kind of the way it works. Okay. So where were we? We're moving this over. Did we build already? I can't remember if I built beforehand. Oh, I know what it might be. So we have this SUI text box on key. Do we actually have anything? Oh, we did hook up events to it. Okay. So when we load the control... Okay. So yeah, we should be good on that front. X11 is a pain in the ass. Yeah. X11 is the reason that I don't have device pixel ratio on Linux at the moment, actually. Because what a nightmare that stuff is. Oh, I know why it's not working. What a dingus. Because I didn't focus the control. That's why. Alright, so when I create this control, actually over here, when we are evaluating this key down business, right, wherever it went, what is one of the first things that we check for? If the focused ID equals the controls ID, otherwise we boot out, right? Which means this doesn't get called, and neither does the user logic, right? Because we haven't actually focused the control yet. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, when we set the visibility, which is essentially opening or closing it, right, of the debug console. At that point, we can also flip the focused ID, right? So we'll say if visible, and then we'll say state. Wasn't it focused? Oh, that's not the UI state. I don't have a way to set that externally yet. Okay. So we're actually going to need to do one more thing. Just a small thing for SUI system. We're going to want to do this towards the top, I think. So let's do it right here. We need a new method. It's going to be... Just go void on this one. We're going to say standard UI system focus control. And we're going to pass state and SUI control. And what that is going to allow us to do is essentially focus the control that's passed through. Which incidentally, or internally, all that's really going to do is just set an ID, right? But we could use that to perform other actions on the control as well, which we might actually do that. So we'll just go to definition on this, and we'll paste that definition here. And let's see. So the state. Do we really not have the... Yeah, here we go. So we need the typed state. And we'll say here, if control. And I'm actually going to move this up here. And we're going to say typed state. Focused ID equals control ID unique ID. Okay. And actually, let's take this one step further. So we'll always do that. We'll say otherwise. You know what? Let's just simplify this a little bit more, actually. Let's say focused ID equals, if we have a control, we'll use the control's unique ID. Otherwise, we'll use invalid ID U64.
There, nice and simple. And so now we can say standard UI system focus control. We can get we'll get the state in a second. And we want state entry text box. Entry text box? Yeah. Entry text box. Okay. And then for the state for the UI system, we'll say systems manager get state k system type standard UI extension. SUI state, and then pass that here. We need the address of this guy. Right. Okay, so when we open this up, if it's visible, then we're going to go ahead and focus that control, right? And in fact, you know what? We're going to simplify this too. And what we're going to say is if it's visible, we'll send that control. If it's not, we'll send nothing. Right? So if we're hiding it, we'll unfocus the control. If we're showing it, we will focus the control. I think that makes the most sense. So now it should work. Which would be heckin' good timing, actually. All right, so let's load this up. Right, and now I should be able to technically, oh, we hit some sort of exception. All right, what did we do? Oh, that's a garbage address, okay. SUI label get text. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, that's wrong. Okay, I see what the problem is. So this is using self, when really it should be using the inner label, right? So we want, we don't want typed state. We want SUI text box internal data. Typed data equals self internal data. And then down here, we need to say typed data content label. And we want the address of that, right? We want to use the content label instead of self. And so this is going to be the same thing. Instead of self, we want the address of typed data content label. Oops. Okay. Now let's see what we got. We know from that crash I'd at least hooked up the events, right? Excuse me. So if we show this, and I just try typing. Okay, so we can add text, right? So that's good. It doesn't clip right, but it's something. It doesn't look like backspacing is working, so we'll need to investigate that. The other thing is I want to kill the default text, right? Because we don't actually need that for like alignment stuff anymore. So that's going to be this. I just want this to be an empty string now, right? So we'll kill that. And then, oh, that's right. We killed the backspace logic. That's why the backspace doesn't work. So label get text. So this is going to be this again is going to be type data content label, and then this is going to be type data content label. Okay, so we can go ahead and run this again. Right, and now we can actually have it work kind of like a text box, right? So the cool thing is we've taken all that hackery out of the debug console and moved some of the text entry logic over to where it should have been in the first place, right? And so now I should be able to like enter this stuff and hit enter, and we'll see here that it looks like yeah, the command ASDF does not exist, right? And so if I type exit, it exits for us, right? So we have that working. That's awesome. Our focusing works, at least for now. Obviously, tab focusing and that kind of thing will need to be taken into account as well. The other things that we're going to have to do around that, so let's actually probably make a list. I guess we'll put it towards the top of where the text box stuff is, just so that we don't kind of lose track of it. So, to do, we need to have the ability to edit, i.e. Enter or remove text from any position in the text box. We need the ability to highlight text, then, you know, add, remove, overwrite text, highlighted text. We need clipping to occur. We need the ability to scroll left, right in text box. In overflow cases. And then we also need navigation of text box caret, including jump to home end functionality. All right. And so I think once we have those things in place, we can call the text box done, right? I think that's fair. Okay, so with that, I think we've made pretty decent progress tonight, actually. So what I'm actually going to do is jump over here and have a look at our Git status. Right, we haven't actually modified that many files, but if we do a git diff, we can see that we've actually got quite a lot in here. So, oh, you know what? I should probably get rid of some dead code real quick, because I don't want to check in a bunch of dead code if we don't really need it, right? And we can safely get rid of this. Like, we've replicated all of this functionality the correct way, so this entire function can go bye-bye. We don't need these key events anymore. Oh, we can get rid of the old one of these because we don't actually need it anymore. So entry control. Let's get rid of entry control, right? We only want entry text box now. So anything that's entry control, we can get rid of, right? As far as the positioning of this one, we can actually reduce the line count now. Might need to add one to that, we'll see. Okay, that looks good. Get rid of these. Get rid of these. Okay, get entry text. Yes, that is entry text box. We don't need... I don't think we need any of that stuff. Console history back. Oh, we didn't even test this, right? So, this needs to be text box, text set. And we want entry control. Or no, entry text box, rather. Right. Do we have any other errors in this file? We do not. Okay. Let me do a quick search. History. Okay, so the up and down keys should give us our history of commands. Let me see if that actually works. I seem to half remember that that might have been broken. But if it is, that's not a problem to fix tonight. I'm just curious to see if it'll actually work. All right, so I'm just going to enter some crap in here a couple of times, right? And then I think we can actually, yeah, we can cycle through history. So that's cool. Yeah, it crashes though. So we'll need to investigate that. So I'm going to put that as a to-do. Some game keybinds. Let's do this not working quite right. Okay. So get diff. Removed a whole bunch of code. That's always awesome. All those are entry controls to entry text boxes. This is sort of the replacement for the enter portion. That works correctly. Removed events. Okay. And then these are all the other changes that we made as an optimization to check those callbacks. Yep, this is more of that stuff. Okay. This is all the Textbox implementation. Just a little bit of code. Okay. All right, so I think we're good. We're going to say Textbox work in progress. And we'll have that pushed up to the standard UI branch. So if you guys want to take a look at that code, you can. And with that, we are going to end the stream tonight. So I thank you guys very much for coming and hanging out with me and talking, and both on the YouTube and Twitch side. Appreciate you guys. And over on the Twitch side, I'm going to see... Who can I raid? You know what? This has actually kind of been a long stream. I'm a little bit tired, so I think I'm going to raid. I'm going to raid Ferret Software tonight because it's a really good cause, I think. So for those of you who don't know, Ferret Software is a ferret rescue run by a game dev on Twitch called Pirate Software, and he runs a rescue for ferrets that have been basically in bad situations where it's negligence or medical testing, things like that. It gives them a good home, gives them the medical attention that they need. And the ad revenue for this stream pays for all of those medical bills. Just the ad revenue alone. So you don't have to throw bits at it. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is leave it up, right? And, you know, ferrets are very complicated, expensive animals to care for. And so I think this is a really good cause. And so I'm going to raid that channel. And with that, say to you all, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to drop a follow if you haven't already, or on YouTube, subscribe. And I'll drop my socials here in the chat, at least on Twitch. I still have to hook that up on the YouTube side, so sorry about that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here, and see ya. I don't know why I did it twice, but okay.